Hey, Jim Crackton here. When I time travel, the Gilded Age is a big destination. It was a boom time in America and is usually pegged from 1870 to around 1900. Usual railroads, steel, oil, but finance was particularly huge in New York City, and that would help them continue rocking well into the early 1900s. This photo is Manhattan in 1908, across the harbor from New Jersey. On the left is the just-opened Hudson Terminal, which was a huge train station and office tower complex. It would only last 63 years until it was closed and demolished in 1971. The tall building in the center is the Singer Building, built by the Singer Sewing Machine Company. It was first built as a 14-story building in 1899, then expanded with the tower you see, making it the tallest building in the world, for one more year, when it was surpassed by the MetLife Tower in 1909. The Singer Building was demolished in 1967, only 68 years old, and the tallest building ever demolished at the time. Now on the site is One Liberty Plaza. So yeah, let's explore Manhattan, the center of New York City, which was the financial center of the United States. Here on the Crackton Files. This is the driveway, which was a main carriage road that circled Central Park, about 6 miles long. There were also pedestrian paths, and of course it was common to boat on the lake.
Oh, I say, did you see that new motor car?
Indeed, quite the spectacle.
The prices are outrageous, though.
Crackton agrees about the motor car prices. They're just a fad anyway. Carriages will never die. So the road was a fashionable place for carriage promenades, where the park was a social place to see and be seen. Guidebooks of the time called it the Grand Route for formal carriage rides and of course many wealthy people. Eventually the loop allowed cars and it became just a road for vehicle traffic. But in 2018, it was closed and is now dedicated to walking, running, and cycling. Not sure if carriages are allowed. Here's a sidewalk merchant selling wind-up toys. In the late 19th century, Germany had developed cheap tin plate stamping and clockwork mechanisms and were exporting huge numbers of small, simple wind-ups. Well, let's zoom in and check them out. Having just visited New York City myself, I can say that sidewalk merchants are definitely still there. You can see how much of a novelty these toys are. By 1903, prices had dropped low enough for the masses, so it's possible these kids are seeing mechanized toys for the very first time. I thought this was pretty cool. It's Grand Central Terminal under construction. It was begun in 1903 and completed in 1913. But first, let's take a look at some details in the background. On the left is the Liberty Storage Building, which promotes silver vaults. Arr, back in the day, Pirate Crackton could have used a silver vault. But from what I read, this was mostly about large household silver and sometimes bullion, so like safe deposit boxes. I was hoping for treasure vaults, and I'm still angry about it. On the right was the F&M Schaefer Brewing Company. They opened in 1842 by a couple of German immigrants and lasted 140 years until being acquired by Stroh's in 1981. But there's a Schaefer Preservation Society that helped keep the brand alive, and Schaefer is still sold in some niche markets in the United States. So up here, I thought this was kind of funny. There's an absolutely enormous Bible school flag on top of this building. I'm not completely sure if it's the same place, but the New York Theological Seminary had a big Bible teachers college, which moved to the city in 1902 and ceased operations only in 2024. Anyone know if it's the same place? And here we have the terminal under construction. It covers 48 acres and has 44 platforms and 67 tracks, and is still one of the largest stations in the world. Herald Square in 1905 was one of New York City's main commercial and entertainment hubs. Here's the New York Herald newspaper, which began in 1835 and where the square got its name. It was acquired in 1924 by the New York Tribune to create the New York Herald Tribune, which closed in 1966. On top of the building is a clock with bronze blacksmiths, nicknamed Stuff and Guff, who would strike the hours with hammers. The building was demolished in 1921. But what happened to Stuff and Guff? Fortunately, they escaped just in time and now survive in the Bennett Memorial at the park at Broadway and 35th. All respect to Stuff and Guff. Over here on the hotel, there's a sign that says, absolutely fireproof. One thing we don't appreciate today is how much building fires have been tamed. This hotel opened in 1884 when hotel fires were a huge issue. Now with a sign like that, thumbing its nose at the fire gods, you might expect that it would have to have burned down. But no. In fact, in 1887, there was a major fire at an adjoining building which was completely destroyed. But the Normandy only had minor damage. The Normandy laughs at your puny fire. It lasted until 1926 when it was finally demolished. Over here we have Lucio's pearls, and evidently they defy detection. We also have a sign, Big Cut Furs, which you can check out at the Little Fur Shop. Crackton's closet is already packed with fur, so I'll be skipping fur shopping this trip. I love this lunch wagon. It's exactly the same formula as any lunch truck that roams around cities today. And they did actually cook in them. They rolled around with coal or kerosene stoves to cook on the spot. It's hard to see, but along the left side next to Lucio's is Macy's new flagship store, which opened in 1902. The original Macy's opened in 1858. So the square was growing fast along with a number of theaters in the area. The 6th Avenue elevated train is running along the right, which opened in 1878. Tenement houses in New York City were built as high-density housing in the mid-1800s to handle the huge wave of immigrants. They were often overcrowded and poorly ventilated. The city is a mixed-use city, which means shops are on the lower floor and people live above. This tailor shows the latest styles in the window. By the way, take note of those gas lamps in the window with the glass globes. You'll see why in a minute. When Crackton is traveling in 1905 New York City, Crackton always visits Kino Tailoring, where the suits are made to order. You can see a hand-lettered sign that says fresh rolls every morning. Not sure if this lady is affiliated with the store, but let's all say hello.
Fresh rolls! Hello, people out there in the 21st century.
Here we can see the various produce at the grocery. S&H green stamps launched in 1896. People could save the stamps and redeem them for household items. Amazingly, the company lasted until 1972, went through various hands, and only officially ended in 2020. And yes, I know the green stamp sign should be green, but the colorizer wasn't cooperating. Technology these days, what are you going to do? Tenement houses weren't public housing built by the government. They were built by speculators, and by 1905, maintenance costs were getting very expensive. So hey, let's check out the inside of a typical tenement house. Here's a small stove and its natural gas. By the 1890s, the New York Gas Light Company had installed gas pipes for stoves and lighting in many parts of the city. Looks like they had a small display mantle with some photos. Of course, they wouldn't have been color, but sometimes people would save color illustrations out of magazines, and we see that around the room. That handmade fan would have been useful in the summer heat. On the wall to the left, they have hanging there a pocket watch and scissors, and through the entry is a typical woman's dressing table. Okay, so up here you can see gas lamps for lighting, which were retrofitted to the apartment. You might wonder, like I did, why it's an open flame and there's no globe. So the glass globe is an accessory that people had to supply themselves. Some did, but in poorer tenements, they often just burned directly from the jet. See, these are the kinds of questions that keep Crackton up at night. Why no globes? I had to know. Anyway, evidently our tailor friend Mr. Keno sprung for the fancy glass globes. The other tenants are probably seething at those uppity globes. Does he think he's better than us? And that's 1905 drama for you. Alright, moving on. We'd best get out of here before we're caught snooping. Here's the other side of the 6th Avenue elevated train we saw earlier in Herald Square. The line opened in 1878 and was removed in 1939 because of the noise. Removal led to the construction of Rockefeller Center and other midtown developments. But this shot really shows the sheer number of people. New York's population in 1903 was about 3.7 million people. All those life stories down there, and so strange that they're all gone now. In 1903, it was common around the holidays for assistance organizations to collect for the poor. Here, the Volunteers of America collect for Christmas dinners and 3,000 sets of shoes. Okay, I shouldn't have kept the following video, but I couldn't help myself.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Here you go, Santa. Pick it up. Okay, Crackton's definitely on the naughty list now. Sorry, Santa, but I'll make it up to you. Here's a nicer lady giving some money. New York had newsstands like this all over the city, which were still common until very recently when the internet killed printed publications. We have Figaro Illustrated, Police News, Success, The Billboard, Puck's Library, all kinds of magazines. So down here, I think we have the romance section. For love of Anne Lambert, a warrior bold, an untold passion, a mysterious wedding ring, the loaded orange. Pretty racy for 1903. Looks like they were published as the Eagle series if you want to look them up. Many of them are available on Project Gutenberg. I did not read them myself, so far as you know. They had lots of magazines in 1903.
We have Scientific American, Harper's Weekly, Success, Collier's, all the magazines from 1900.
Vending machines became common in the late 1890s, like this one selling Adams Tutti Frutti Pepsin gum. Adams was Thomas Adams, who invented his gum in 1859. They launched the brand Chiclets in 1900. It continued to exist in various forms and was bought in 2002. Knox's Gelatin changes a prosy dinner into a poem. Rose Knox took over Knox Gelatin after her husband died in 1908. She was widely respected as a businesswoman and received many honors in her lifetime. I'm not completely sure where this is, but maybe the entrance to an elevated train? In 1905, Chinese immigrants had been living in New York for several decades, and Mott Street had a large population. I really like this Chinese restaurant with the decorative balcony. These girls look Irish to me. It was common for Irish immigrants to do street selling. She's staring at us because we are standing on the sidewalk under a black cloak with this huge camera that takes an 8x10-inch glass negative. These photographs were used for postcards, by the way, so she might have ended up on a postcard somewhere. I'm pretty sure this is a funeral hearse from the Gothic design. The white horses dressed in netting suggests it may have been a young person or unmarried woman because white processions symbolized purity. I have to say, the AI did a fantastic job of animating what was a blurry shot. Mott Street at this time was lined with laundries, tea shops, herbal medicine stores, and gambling houses. It had a reputation in the press as an exotic and possibly dangerous place. So one thing you see here and still today are all the retrofitted fire escapes. The Tenement House Act of 1901 had recently passed, which required fireproofing, windows in every room, and improved sanitation. In 1900, many poor families in New York City didn't have refrigeration, and ice was a luxury. Many philanthropists, particularly Charles W. Morse, known as the Ice King, and later the Knickerbocker Ice Company, sometimes funded ice distribution programs for the poor. It was often done during heat waves and also for public health because spoiled milk was a major infant mortality problem. For the Ice King, unfortunately, he would end up as the Jail King for violating federal banking laws. The Great Blizzard of 1899 was one of the most severe cold waves and snowstorms in U.S. history. It struck much of the country, including New York City, who recorded 16 inches of snow and sub-zero record colds. I would guess this photo is either from the beginning or after the storm, because during the storm, the streetcars and trains were paralyzed.
Looks like this snow isn't letting up.
Indeed. Best keep these sidewalks clear.
The Brooklyn Ferry Line opened in 1909, so this may be very close to when it first launched. Here's a close-up of the wheelhouse. I love that the captain is clearly smoking a pipe. According to the photo caption, this might have been an entrant in the Hudson-Fulton celebration, which took place for 2 weeks starting September 25, 1909. It was a massive civic festival that celebrated Henry Hudson's 1609 voyage up the river and the 100th anniversary of Robert Fulton's 1807 steamboat, the Clermont, which was critical in commercial steamships. The event drew millions of people to New York City. I like this slice-of-life street shot, which has some good signage. At the top, we have Lee & Perrins Worcestershire sauce, which was first invented in 1837 by two chemists, Lee & Perrins from Worcester, UK. Of course, it's still sold today, now owned by Kraft Heinz. Then we have amylin powder, odorless, antiseptic, for special toilet uses. I couldn't find much about amylin except it disappeared maybe in the 1970s. Benedictine cordial was created in 1863 in France. It's still sold today, though was bought in 1986 by Martini and Rossi. Supposedly, the recipe is a closely guarded trade secret, known only to 3 people at a time. Check out this sign. And look while you can, because on June 1st, 1903, this building is coming down for a new 20-story hotel. Also take a look at those 2 places to the left, on the corner and the side street, which I think are private Gilded Age mansions, though the corner one may have been converted into commercial. Regardless, the new hotel is going to eat both of those as well. And here's the site today. Looks like our 20-story hotel was built and is still standing 120 years later. You can now imagine the ghosts of those mansions and the old hotel. Should I do more now comparison shots like this? Let Crackton know in the comments. And that wraps up this video. I'll leave you with Brighton Beach, Coney Island in 1903. I felt bad these people had their chance at immortality shattered by a broken glass negative. But Crackton's powers cannot be suppressed by a mere broken image. The 2-decker pier was the mammoth Old Iron Pier, 1,000 feet long, built in 1879, and removed around 1918. There's surprisingly little information about it, but the removal might be related to the Dreamland fire in 1911. What is Dreamland? You might find out in a future episode. Honestly, there's so much about New York City that this video could be endless, but I had to stop. I'll probably do more of the city in future episodes. So did I get anything wrong? Feel free to correct the Crackton in the comments, and I'll see you in the next dramatic episode of The Crackton Files.